Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earthship Defender, watching the stars through the main screen. His hands were steady on the control panel, but his mind was full of worry. 3 weeks ago, he had been part of the rescue mission to Kepler 442b. What he saw there still gave him nightmares. The planet had been home to the Altari people for thousands of years. They were peaceful farmers and builders who had never hurt anyone. But when the Zephyrian Dominion came, they showed no mercy. Jake remembered walking through the burned cities, seeing the empty homes and silent streets. Most of the Altari were dead. The ones who lived had been taken as slaves. The Dominion ships were like nothing Jake had ever seen. They looked like giant crystals floating in space, but they were weapons of war. Their hulls shined with a cold blue light, and their guns could turn a city to ash in seconds. The Zephyrians inside these ships were tall, thin beings with skin like glass. They had no emotion, no kindness, and no mercy. Jake had saved about 200 Altari refugees from the dying planet. They were now living on Earth, telling their stories to anyone who would listen. The stories were all the same. The Dominion would come to a world, demand total surrender, and then destroy or enslave everyone who lived there. They had been doing this for 3,000 years. On Earth, people were scared. The news showed pictures of the Dominion fleet moving through space. There were thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands. Each one was bigger than Earth's largest battleship. The fleet was still far away, but it was getting closer every day. Admiral Lisa Carter was the top military leader on Earth. She had called a meeting of all the world's leaders. Jake was there because he had seen the Dominion up close. The meeting room was full of presidents, generals, and scientists. Everyone looked worried. "The Dominion will be here in 6 months," Admiral Carter said. Her voice was calm, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. "Our spies tell us they are bringing their full fleet. That means over 50,000 ships." President from Europe raised his hand. "How many ships do we have?" 3,000, Carter answered. "And our ships are much smaller than theirs." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. Earth could not win a fair fight against the Dominion. Dr. Alex Turner was sitting at the back of the room. He was a scientist who studied alien life forms. For the past 5 years, he had been working on captured Dominion technology. Jake had met him a few times and knew he was very smart. Dr. Turner stood up. "I need to tell you all something important," he said. "The Zephyrians are not just conquerors, they are killers. My research shows they have destroyed over 200 intelligent species completely. When they find a race that fights back, they don't just defeat them, they kill every single one." A general from Asia asked, "What makes them so strong?" "Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours," Dr. Turner explained. "But that's not the worst part. The worst part is how they think. They see all organic life as inferior. To them, we are like insects. They feel nothing when they kill us." Jake remembered the Altari children he had rescued. They had watched their parents die and their world burn. The Zephyrians had done it, without any feeling at all. It was just another day's work for them. Admiral Carter spoke again. "We have 3 choices. We can surrender and hope they let some of us live as slaves. We can hide and hope they don't find us. Or we can fight. Fighting is suicide," said a scientist from Japan. "We can't win against 50,000 ships." "Maybe," Carter said. "But I've been studying the Dominion for years. They have conquered the galaxy because most species surrender without fighting. They are used to easy victories. They might not be ready for a real war." Jake thought about the Dominion soldiers he had seen on Kepler 442b. They were efficient and deadly, but they followed orders without thinking. They never expected anyone to fight back in ways they didn't understand. Dr. Turner had more bad news. "The Dominion has already sent scout ships to our solar system. They know where we are and how many of us there are. They are planning to wipe out humanity completely." The room was silent again. Everyone understood that there was no escape. The Dominion was coming, and they wanted every human dead. A young woman named Colonel Grace Mitchell was also at the meeting. She was in charge of Earth's special forces. She had been quiet during most of the discussion, but now she spoke. "If we're going to die anyway, let's make them pay for it," she said. "Let's hit them first, before they can bring their full fleet. Here. Maybe we can't win, but we can hurt them." Admiral Carter nodded. "That's exactly what I was thinking. We have 6 months to prepare. We need to build more ships, train more soldiers, and find allies." "Allies?" asked the European president. "Who would help us against the Dominion?" Dr. Turner smiled for the first time in the meeting. "There are other species out there who hate the Dominion. Some of them are still fighting. If we can reach them, maybe we can work together." Jake thought about the Altari refugees on Earth. They had lost everything, but they still wanted to fight back. Maybe there were others like them scattered across the galaxy. The meeting ended with a decision that would change everything. Earth would not wait for the Dominion to come. They would take the fight to their enemies. It was a desperate plan with little chance of success, but it was better than sitting and waiting to die. As Jake left the meeting room, he looked out at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Dominion fleet was coming. But for the first time, since Kepler 442b, he felt something other than fear. He felt ready to fight. Commander Ryan Brooks checked his watch as the ship Defiance moved through the dark space between stars. They had been traveling for 3 weeks, and now they were deep inside Dominion territory. No human ship had ever come this far into enemy space and returned home. Ryan's team was small but skilled. There were only 12 people on the mission, each one picked for their special abilities. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was their communications expert. She could speak 6 alien languages and had built a new type of translator that worked faster than anything Earth had ever made. Sergeant Tony Walker was their weapons specialist, a tough man who had fought in every major battle Earth had seen in the past 10 years. Their target was Tartarus Prime, a prison world where the Dominion kept their most dangerous captives. Earth's spies had learned that important alien leaders were being held there. These leaders might have information about Dominion fleet movements and weak points in their defenses, but the real reason for the mission was different. Admiral Carter believed that if they could free some alien prisoners, it might inspire other species to fight back. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had lived in fear of the Dominion. Maybe it was time to show them that the Zephyrians could be beaten. They got closer to Tartarus Prime. Ryan could see why the Dominion had chosen this place for a prison. The planet was a ball of gray rock with no atmosphere and no life. The only structures on the surface were the prison domes, each one protected by powerful energy shields. Guard towers with laser cannons surrounded every dome. "How many prisoners do you think are down there?" asked Amy. Ryan looked at the intelligence reports. "Maybe 10,000 from dozens of different species. Some have been there for over 100 years. The plan was risky, but simple. They would land the Defiance in a canyon on the dark side of the planet, then use stealth suits to sneak into the main prison dome. Once inside, they would free as many prisoners as possible and escape before the guards could stop them. Tony had modified their weapons to work against Dominion armor. The Zephyrians wore suits made of the same crystal material as their ships, but Tony had found a way to make their bullets penetrate the crystal. It had taken months of testing, but now they had a weapon that could hurt their enemies. The landing went smoothly. The Defiance set down in the canyon without being detected. Ryan's team put on their stealth suits and began the long walk to the prison. The gravity on Tartarus Prime was heavier than Earth, making every step difficult. When they reached the prison dome, Amy went to work on the security system. She had been studying Dominion computer codes for years. Her fingers moved quickly over her portable computer as she searched for a way in. "Got it," she whispered after 20 minutes. "The door will open in 30 seconds. They slipped inside and found themselves in a long corridor lined with prison cells. The cells were made of energy barriers instead of bars. Inside each cell was an alien being from a species Ryan had never seen before. The first prisoner they freed was a tall, four-armed creature with blue skin. He spoke in a language Amy's translator couldn't understand at first, but after a few minutes the device began to work. "You are not Zephyrians," the alien said. His voice was full of surprise. "What are you?" "We're humans from Earth," Ryan explained. "We're here to get you out." The alien's eyes went wide. "Humans? But the Dominion said your species was weak and cowardly." "The Dominion says a lot of things," Amy replied. "Most of them are lies." As they freed more prisoners, Ryan began to understand the true size of the Dominion's crimes. There were Corvan warriors who had once ruled a mighty empire. There were ethereal mystics who could speak with their minds. There were Drakmor engineers who had built machines that could travel faster than light. All of these species had fought the Dominion and lost. Many had seen their entire worlds destroyed. But as they watched humans risking their lives to save them, something changed in their eyes. The hopelessness began to fade. An old Corvan named Thektar grabbed Ryan's arm. "Why do you do this? Your species has never been conquered by the Dominion. You could hide on your distant world and be safe." Ryan thought about the question. "Because hiding isn't living. If we don't fight now, the Dominion will come for us eventually, and because it's the right thing to do." Thektar smiled, showing sharp teeth. "I have not heard those words in 50 years. The right thing to do. I had forgotten that some beings still thought that way." The escape became more difficult as they freed more prisoners. The alarm had been triggered, and Dominion guards were searching the prison. Ryan's team had to fight their way through several checkpoints, their modified weapons proving deadly against the crystal armor of their enemies. Amy made contact with other prison domes and discovered that uprisings were starting all over the planet. Word had spread that rescuers had come, and prisoners everywhere were breaking free from their cells. As they reached the Defiance with over 200 freed aliens, Ryan realized that their mission had become something bigger than they had planned. They weren't just rescuing prisoners anymore. They were starting a revolution. The ship lifted off from Tartarus Prime with Dominion fighters chasing them. But they had allies now. Some of the freed Corvan warriors knew how to operate captured Dominion weapons, and they helped fight off the attackers. As they jumped to light speed and headed back toward human space, Thektar approached Ryan on the bridge. "Commander," the old alien said, "my people have a saying. The spark that lights the fire may be small, but it can burn down forests. Today you have lit such a spark." Ryan looked at the freed prisoners filling his ship. Some were crying with joy. Others were already planning their return to the fight. All of them were talking about the humans who had come to save them. The galaxy would never be the same. News of the rescue from Tartarus Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had struck back at the Dominion and lived to tell about it. Captain Jake Morrison found himself at the center of something he had never expected, a growing rebellion. The freed prisoners from Tartarus Prime had gone back to their home worlds, carrying stories of human courage and determination. Within weeks, secret messages began arriving at Earth from dozens of different species. They all said the same thing. They wanted to fight back, and they wanted humans to help them. Colonel Grace Mitchell was chosen to lead the new training program. She established a secret base on a hidden moon called Sanctuary, far from Dominion patrol routes. The moon had been abandoned for centuries, but it had underground facilities that could be expanded. The first alien volunteers arrived at Sanctuary, 3 months after the prison break. There were Corvan warriors, ethereal mystics, and Drakmor engineers. There were also beings from species Jake had never heard of, the reptilian Soros, the winged Etheri, and the rock-skinned Terrans. Grace was amazed by how quickly they learned. These aliens had been fighting the Dominion for generations, but they had always fought in the old ways. They formed ranks, followed orders, and met their enemies head-on. The Dominion always won because they had better weapons and more ships. But humans fought differently. They used tricks, ambushes, and unexpected tactics. They hit fast and ran away before the enemy could respond. They broke the rules of warfare that the Dominion expected everyone to follow. Sergeant Tony Walker became the most popular instructor at Sanctuary. He taught the aliens how to make bombs from common materials, how to hide in enemy territory, and how to sabotage Dominion equipment. The aliens were eager students, and they brought their own knowledge to the training. The Corvan warriors taught humans about Dominion weak points. Their ancestors had fought the Zephyrians when they first began conquering the galaxy. They knew that the crystal ships had gaps in their armor near the engines, and that Dominion soldiers couldn't see well in certain types of light. The ethereal mystics shared their mental powers with the human psychics. Earth had only a few people with telepathic abilities, but the ethereals could amplify their powers. Together, they learned to confuse Dominion communications and even influence the thoughts of enemy soldiers. Dr. Alex Turner worked with the Drakmor engineers to improve human weapons. The Drakmor had been building machines for thousands of years, and they understood technology in ways that amazed the human scientists. Together, they created new weapons that could pierce Dominion shields and armor. But the most important thing that happened at Sanctuary was not the training or the weapons. It was the friendships that formed between humans and aliens. For the first time in their lives, these beings from different worlds fought side by side as equals. Dektar, the old Korvan who had been rescued from Tartarus Prime, became Grace's closest advisor. He had spent 50 years in prison, but he still remembered the old ways of warfare. More importantly, he remembered what it felt like to have hope. "Your species is strange," he told Grace one day, as they watched mixed teams of humans and aliens practicing together. "Most species fight for their own survival, but you fight for others even when it doesn't benefit you." Grace smiled. "Maybe that's what makes us human." The rebellion grew quickly. Every week new volunteers arrived at Sanctuary. Every month, new cells of resistance fighters were established on Dominion worlds. The Zephyrians began to notice that their perfect order was breaking down. Overlord Vexthera, the supreme leader of the Dominion, was not pleased. She had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, and she had never seen such organized resistance. Her response was swift and brutal. The Dominion fleet destroyed 3 star systems that were suspected of supporting the rebellion. Billions of innocent beings died in the attacks. Entire worlds were turned into clouds of radioactive dust. It was meant to be a warning to anyone who thought of defying the Dominion, but the plan backfired. Instead of crushing the rebellion, the attacks made it stronger. Species that had been neutral suddenly joined the fight. The Dominion had shown its true face, and no one could pretend anymore that cooperation would keep them safe. Admiral Lisa, Carter received reports of uprisings on dozens of worlds. Dominion garrison forces were being ambushed by rebels using human tactics. Supply convoys were disappearing. Communication networks were being sabotaged. The Dominion's response was to send more ships to patrol their territory. But this weakened their main fleet, which was still preparing for the invasion of Earth. Carter realized that the rebellion was buying humanity precious time. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez had been monitoring Dominion communications from her station on Sanctuary. Her improved translators could now understand most of the enemy's military codes. What she discovered changed everything. "Admiral," she reported during a secure communication with Earth, "the Dominion is starting to crack. Their military leaders are arguing about how to handle the rebellion. Some want to focus on crushing the uprisings. Others want to attack Earth immediately." "What does that mean for us?" Carter asked. "It means they're not thinking clearly anymore. For 3,000 years, they've had total control. They don't know how to handle a real war. The biggest test came when the rebellion attempted its first major operation. Intelligence reports indicated that the Dominion was moving a large fleet to the Nexus Station, a massive space fortress that controlled 3 important trade routes. Grace assembled the largest force of rebels ever brought together. There were humans, Korvans, Ethereals, Drakmor, and 20 other species. They had captured and modified Dominion ships, built new weapons, and trained together for months. The attack on Nexus Station would be the rebellion's greatest gamble. If they won, they would prove that the Dominion could be beaten in a real battle. If they lost, the rebellion might be crushed forever. Jake Morrison was chosen to lead the assault. As his mixed fleet approached the station, he thought about how much had changed since the rescue from Tartarus Prime. The galaxy was at war, and humanity was leading the fight for freedom. The battle was about to begin. The Battle of Nexus Station began at dawn on the 4th day of the 7th month. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of his ship as the rebel fleet dropped out of lightspeed. What he saw made his heart sink. Nexus Station was bigger. than anyone had imagined. The space fortress was the size of a small moon, covered in weapon platforms and shield generators. Around it floated 300 Dominion warships, their crystal hulls gleaming in the light of the nearby star. Jake's rebel fleet had only 150 ships. Half of them were captured Dominion vessels that had been modified by human and alien engineers. The other half were ships built by the various rebel species. They were outnumbered 2-1, and the enemy had the advantage of fighting from a fortress. "All ships, this is Morrison." Jake spoke into his communicator. "Remember what we learned at Sanctuary. The Dominion expects us to fight like they do. We're going to give them something they've never seen before." The first wave of the attack came from the ethereal ships. These vessels were smaller than the others, but they had a special ability. The ethereal pilots could make their ships invisible to Dominion sensors for short periods. They flew straight at the station, appearing to be empty space. The Dominion commanders were confused when their sensors showed nothing, but their weapons were being destroyed by invisible attackers. They began firing randomly, trying to hit enemies they couldn't see. This created chaos in their defensive formation. While the Dominion was distracted, the main rebel fleet attacked from 3 different directions. This was another human tactic that the Zephyrians didn't understand. They always attacked from one direction, in perfect formation. The rebels came from everywhere at once. Sergeant Tony Walker was aboard one of the boarding ships. His job was to get inside the station and destroy the main power generator. He had trained for this mission for months, working with Corvan warriors and Drakmor engineers. The boarding ship was hit by enemy fire as it approached the station, but the pilot managed to crash land in one of the docking bays. Tony and his team of mixed human and alien fighters poured out of the wreckage, already firing at the Dominion guards. The fight inside the station was brutal. The corridors were narrow and the Dominion soldiers had the advantage of knowing the layout. But Tony's team had something the enemy didn't expect: diversity. The Corvan warriors could tear through Dominion armor with their bare hands. The ethereals could predict where the enemy would attack next. The Drakmor engineers could override the station's security systems, and the humans tied it all together with tactics that broke every rule of warfare. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was monitoring enemy communications from her ship. She had discovered something important about the Dominion's command structure. All of their orders came from a single central computer on the station. If she could hack into that computer, she might be able to confuse their entire fleet. "Jake, I'm reading something strange," she reported. "The Dominion ships are all following the same attack pattern. They're not thinking for themselves." Jake realized what this meant. The Zephyrians had built their military to be perfect and efficient. Every ship followed orders exactly. But this meant they couldn't adapt when something unexpected happened. "All ships, listen up," Jake announced. "Use random attack patterns, don't follow any plan, just hit them with everything you've got from every direction you can think of." The rebel ships began attacking in ways that made no sense to the Dominion commanders. Some ships flew in circles. Others flew straight up and down. A few even flew backwards while shooting. It looked like chaos, but it was working. The Dominion fleet began to break apart. Their ships were designed to work together in perfect formation, but they couldn't handle the unpredictable rebel attacks. Several enemy ships collided with each other, trying to respond to threats from multiple directions. Inside the station, Tony's team had reached the power generator. It was a massive crystal structure that powered the entire fortress. The Drakmor engineer named Vexkar knew exactly how to destroy it. "The crystal has a resonance frequency," Vexkar explained as they set up the explosives. "If we can match that frequency with our weapons, the whole thing will shatter." The plan worked perfectly. When the explosives went off, they created a vibration that matched the crystal's natural frequency. The power generator didn't just explode. It sang a high-piercing note that shattered every crystal structure in the station. The lights went out on Nexus Station. The shields collapsed. The weapon platform stopped firing. For the first time in 3,000 years, a major Dominion fortress was helpless. But the real surprise came from the Dominion fleet itself. With the station's central computer offline, the enemy ships couldn't receive orders. They began flying in random patterns, crashing into each other and firing at empty space. Jake watched in amazement as the mighty Dominion fleet destroyed itself. Without their perfect coordination, they were just confused ships with no idea what to do. Amy's voice came over the communicator. "Jake, I'm picking up transmissions from across the galaxy. Other species are watching this battle. They're seeing that the Dominion can be beaten." The Battle of Nexus Station lasted 3 days, but the outcome was decided in the first hour. The Dominion lost 200 ships and their most important fortress. The rebels lost only 30 ships, mostly due to accidents and equipment failures. More importantly, the galaxy was watching. The battle was broadcast on secret rebel networks to hundreds of worlds. Beings who had lived in fear for thousands of years saw something they had never thought possible: the Dominion running away from a battle. Within hours of the victory, reports came in of uprisings on 50 different worlds. The Dominion's client species were openly rebelling. Their perfect empire was cracking like a broken crystal. Colonel Grace Mitchell received the news at Sanctuary. "The tide has turned," she told her mixed staff of human and alien officers. "The Dominion is no longer invincible. Now we take the fight to their home world." The rebellion had become a revolution, and the revolution was winning. The final assault on Zephyros Prime began 6 months after the victory at Nexus Station. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the crystal world that had been the center of galactic oppression for 3,000 years. Today that would end. The planet looked like a giant jewel floating in space. Its surface was covered in crystal spires that reached into the clouds. Each spire was a city where millions of Zephyrians lived and worked. At the center of the largest spire was the Obsidian Throne, where Overlord Vexathera ruled the galaxy. Jake's fleet was the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. There were ships from over 200 different species, all united under the rebel banner. Human vessels flew alongside Corvan battleships, ethereal cruisers, and Drakmor carriers. It was a rainbow of colors and designs, but they all had one goal. Admiral Lisa Carter had spent months planning this attack. The Dominion's home fleet was still powerful. Even after their losses at Nexus Station, they had pulled ships back from across the galaxy to defend their capital world. The battle would be close. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Carter." Her voice came over the communication system. "Remember, our goal is not to destroy the planet. Our goal is to free it. Many innocent beings live on Zephyros Prime. We fight to liberate, not to conquer." The battle began when the Dominion fleet moved to intercept the rebels. But something strange happened. Some of the Dominion ships didn't fire. Their crews had been watching the rebellion spread across the galaxy, and they were tired of fighting for a system that brought only death and fear. Commander Ryan Brooks was leading a strike team toward the planet's surface. His mission was to reach the Obsidian Throne and capture Overlord Vexathera. It was dangerous work, but Ryan had volunteers from dozens of species who wanted to be part of ending the Dominion forever. The landing was rough. Dominion ground forces were waiting for them, but they were confused and disorganized. Many of their officers had fled when they saw the size of the rebel fleet. The soldiers who remained fought bravely, but their hearts weren't in it anymore. Ryan's team fought through the crystal streets of the capital city. The buildings around them were beautiful but cold, just like their creators. There were no parks, no art, no signs of joy anywhere. The Zephyrians had built a perfect city with no soul. Meanwhile, in space, the battle was turning in favor of the rebels. The Dominion ships were powerful, but they couldn't handle the chaos of fighting so many different types of enemies at once. Human tactics, Corvan strength, ethereal mental powers, and Drakmor engineering all combined into something the Zephyrians couldn't understand or defeat. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was coordinating the communications between all the different species in the fleet. It was a difficult job because each species had its own language and culture, but the translator systems that humans and aliens had built together were working perfectly. "Admiral Carter," Amy reported, "I'm getting surrender signals from 17 Dominion ships. Their crews want to join us." Carter smiled. This was what she had hoped for. Not every Zephyrian was evil. Many of them were just following orders because they didn't know there was another way to live. On the planet's surface, Ryan's team had reached the base of the Great Spire. The building was over a mile tall, and Overlord Vexithara was at the very top. They would have to fight their way up through hundreds of floors, each one defended by the Dominion's best soldiers. But they had help. Sergeant Tony Walker had trained local rebels on dozens of worlds, and some of them had made it to Zephyros Prime. The planet's slave workers were rising up all over the capital city, attacking their Dominion masters with tools and improvised weapons. The fight up the spire was the hardest battle Ryan had ever experienced. The Dominion guards fought desperately, knowing that their whole way of life was ending. But the rebels fought for something stronger, the dream of freedom for everyone in the galaxy. Floor by floor they climbed higher. Humans, Corvins, Ethereals, Drakmor, and dozens of other species fought side by side. When one fell, another took their place. They had come too far to stop now. Finally, Ryan reached the throne room at the top of the spire. Overlord Vexithara was waiting for him, sitting on a throne made of black crystal. She was tall and thin, with skin like polished glass and eyes that glowed with cold fire. "So," she said in perfect English, "the inferior species have come to challenge me. You cannot win. Order will always defeat chaos." Ryan looked around the throne room. It was beautiful, but empty, just like the rest of Zephyrian civilization. "You're wrong," he told her. "Chaos isn't the opposite of order. Freedom is. And freedom always wins in the end." The fight between Ryan and Vexithara was brief. She was fast and strong, but she had never fought someone who refused to follow the rules. Ryan's human unpredictability, combined with techniques he had learned from alien allies, overwhelmed her perfect combat algorithms. When Vexithara fell, something amazing happened across the galaxy. The Dominion's command structure collapsed completely. Without their supreme leader, the rigid hierarchy couldn't function. Dominion ships everywhere stopped fighting and asked for instructions that would never come. Admiral Carter received the surrender of the entire Dominion fleet. Some ships tried to flee, but most of their crews were ready for the war to end. They had been fighting for so long that they had forgotten why they started. But Jake Morrison made the most important decision of all. When the leaders of the rebel species offered to make him the new ruler of the galaxy, he refused. "We didn't fight to replace one tyrant with another," he told them. "We fought so that everyone could be free. The galaxy belongs to all of us now." Instead of taking power, the humans helped establish the Galactic Liberation Council. Every species that had fought for freedom got a voice in the new government. Decisions would be made by agreement, not by force. Dr. Alex Turner wrote in his final report, "Today the age of the Dominion ended. We didn't conquer the galaxy. We freed it. And in doing so, we proved that the best human quality isn't our strength or our intelligence. It's our refusal to bow to tyrants and our willingness to help others stand up beside us." Across the galaxy, beings who had lived in fear for thousands of years walked free for the first time. Children of different species played together in gardens that had once been slave markets. The universe had been reborn and everyone had a place in it. The age of freedom had begun.